Mm-hmm.
All right. So could you tell me a little bit about yourself, I guess?
Of course, my name's Gary Hubbard. Been around a few years. 1951 was the year I was born, so it's in Battle Creek. Been born and raised and stayed there my whole life. Except now I work in Kalamazoo, which
Yeah.
is where I'm at today. But went to school, Battle Creek Lakeview over there, to their school system back in the day. Um, Graduated in 1969 from high school. Was college a few years later. Um, it's kind of like one of 7 children. Of course, 2 parents, and then living in a 2-bedroom home with 1 bathroom.
Sounds rough.
Yes, it was. Um, it's just one of those things that I guess with me, sports was kind of an outlet to get out of the house and such as that. We'd already always had bikes and stuff like that, but with things playing baseball, it was a natural thing. Something we did. We played, pick up football or something like that. Soccer was not known about at that point.
So,
One of the kids that lived on the lake played ice hockey
oh yeah.
because they had skates in the pond to play it on, but not so much like us.
So this, so it seems like baseball and football were the
Well,
sports that you most
baseball was the
gravitated to.
biggest one. I was told, I was in high school that kind of too small for football at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Baseball is I gravitated to back when I was a kid because it was a very cheap sport. You need a glove and maybe a hat, but
Yeah.
most of the time it was little league. They had that offered, so and I play it. Never had my parents go to any games, but it was always interesting because I, being a parent, my grandparent would always go to my children's, grandchildren's games, so never missed them. So
Did you play for like a high school team or is there?
yeah, I played through high school until my through sophomore year, and then I will tell you, my parents split up, and then I ended up going to work pretty much
Oh,
after work, after school, excuse me, and working in a gas station, pump gas and washing windows. Back in the day when you'd have to full service. Anyway, so
deposit and
yeah, we'll just let it go.
all right. So baseball, obviously, America.
Mhm.
It's America's pastime. Can you think of why that would be?
It was always something that any kid on the street could pick up and start playing. We used to play wiffle ball all the time. Kids' backyards to save windows. We'd play with a wiffle ball instead of a hard ball. Parents appreciated that. Neighbors appreciated that. And we'd even play what we call in a boulevard. I was raised in the projects, as we called them in Battle Creek. It was old military housing. So we had a boulevard. We could play baseball, and if we felt like it, football in the fall. But, things that changed later on in my life, I'll get to. So anyway, go ahead.
So you'd say that's why you think the whole country gravitated towards them. It's easy to get into.
Yeah, it was just the sport of choice back in the, because I was in the 50s, and
Mm-hmm.
in the early 60s, it was the sport, even back in the 20s, 30s.
Mm-hmm.
The big, stadiums were built for it, a lot more teams. I will say back then, probably, segregation was a big thing. Everybody had their separate sports, and I will say that for women too.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So
go ahead.
how have like the sports as far as like the games themselves, like how they're played, how has baseball changed? Can you think of any changes that have?
Well, over time, it was like when you were drafted by a team, you were not allowed to just go ahead and sign on free agency, and all that stuff came about later on when, like, I think it was Kurt Flood back in the day when he was going to be traded, and he kind of went to court and just said, hey, this isn't right. I'm just like a piece of meat. They're just sending me anywhere, any place, anytime. I should have a choice in it. Like after so many years, play out my contract and do that stuff. And so he changed the game a little bit on how the owners could deal with their players. and it to me was the biggest change. People started having more. The money started rolling in more. Al Kaline was my favorite sport personality back in the day. He talked about, a few years back, the top salary he ever made was $100,000 a year, and he thought he was, hit a
Yeah.
gold mine or something, to do that. And he was just this type of player that he was the type of player that stayed with the team his whole career, the Tigers. So the Detroit Tigers were on the team, but and still are.
Yeah. So pretty much players are less like property now. They're treated more as people.
Yeah, it's a business. I mean, it
Yeah.
always has been a business, but now it's a very lucrative business. I mean, people say they don't make money off owning a team, but I think they seem to do rather well.
Yeah.
But,
All right. So what's the most exciting game you participated in or watched?
well, I think the biggest thing I could say that I played softball when I was early on in my early 20s, but then I destroyed my knee. But the one year I played softball, playing in was winning the state industrial league softball back when I worked at Eaton Corporation. I played on that team and it was a good thing. But the biggest thing was back in the 1980, when the U.S. beat the Russians in hockey. It wasn't for the gold medal yet. It was still they had to play that game yet. But it
Cold
was
War
just
and
one of those things that I got into hockey by accident just because. Watching hockey back in '72, I think it was because I had a house in KVD in Detroit. I was the only one that played sports and during the day, and I was working second shift and watching Mickey Redmond play and such back then. And that's my first experience, even at something other than football or baseball, because soccer wasn't played around here.
Yeah. All right. So who was the most important athlete when you were younger?
I would believe Al Kaline. He was the idol that I had. He and a couple other the Detroit Tigers. It was just they were. Al was the type of guy. He still is with the Detroit organization, but he's probably mid-70s, if not later than that. He just perfect role model. Never got into trouble. Never this DUIs. Never this that or anything else. Something you could look up to and want your kids to be like if they ever played baseball or your sport.
I don't know too much about older baseball and players and stuff like that. And he played for the Tigers, you said?
Yes, he played for the Detroit Tigers his whole career, which I think ended up being, 20 odd years. So
Was he, obviously what you said, he sounds like a great role model and a great athlete. Was that for everybody or more of people in Michigan and Detroit Tigers fans? Did other people know about him as much?
He was a big ambassador for the Detroit area and Michigan in general, but he also for baseball in general. He was the ultimate professionalist. He never missed a game because he had an ache or pain. I don't ever remember him missing games. Let's put it that way. He's the best right fielder probably they ever had in a game. And he never wore it on his shoulders or like I'm better than anyone else. It was always I play the game because it's a game and I love playing the game and I'm very fortunate to be paid for it. So that's his attitude.
How do you think athletes' roles in society have changed?
Well, I know we all looked upon them, but people want to look at them as being, superstars, like celebrities, which it's kind of changed over the time, but yet their money and their such is the problem being half of them don't have the training of what to do with their money once they have it, and so it's kind of looked upon as they're little kids are still like little kids. They're still looking upon them as being the idol that they really want to do when they grow up and be like and such as that. But the money in sports has just gotten it's gotten out of hand a little bit just to play a game. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I'm really answering the question. It seems like it's changed, but yet it hasn't changed because you still had people idolizing, but now the money is just for everybody. The minimum salary is ridiculous for just for being a utility player.
Yeah, that does answer the question. It answers a couple other ones too. So, how has the role of sports changed in your lifetime, both for you and in society?
The role of sports, I would say there's a lot more to watch. I mean, I changed my views. Soccer, I used to think, well, I didn't know it, the sport, let's put it that way. But, when you start coaching, you start reading, you start doing this, you start doing that, the role of soccer has changed for me that I enjoy watching a soccer match, whether it's World Cup or whatever. And I don't have any affiliation in any of the teams, but I just like watching. Other people tell me, how can you watch such a boring game? It's only 1-0 or this, that, or it's just one of those things that I think, to me, I've expanded my horizons, my, vast interest in sports just through TV. I mean, TV has been a big medium out there that has pushed more sports. I'll sit there and watch hockey like I did the other night, wondering why I watched it in overtime when it's kind of like, do the Kings or Devils mean anything to me, but they're still hockey. You still watch it.
It's a good game. All right. That answers another one of my questions. How does media change sports? This is a tough one. In our class, we've focused a lot on the definition of a sport, and it's kind of tricky to think about it. We've been going between what's the difference between play, a game, and a sport. So, off the top of your head, what's your definition of a sport?
I guess old school tells me, it's an organized program that people play, and they're playing against each other, and somebody wins, somebody loses. It could be, what we do is, I don't know, you can always say you're being a good sport, being a person that goes along with the program. In other words, same as playing on a team. You're a team player here. So you're kind of being a good sport. But other than that, it's kind of an interesting concept.
Yeah. Our main definitions of it are that it starts at a specific time and it ends at a specific time, barring overtimes and stuff like that.
I can see that.
It's officiated. People are watching, or it's there's a third party that's participating. And then the third is that I'm not sure what it is. I think it's usually somebody wins or loses. There's a couple of sports where somebody wins more than somebody else. But yeah, so you touched on some of those.
I can see that.
Yeah. All right. So baseball. Obviously, there's been issues about steroids and stuff like that. Was that a big deal at all back in the 70s? Was that even around?
Yeah, in the 70s, 80s, 90s. The 70s was, I would say somebody was accused of corking a bat or something like that to make the ball go farther.
Oh, whoops. Let's stop recording. I'm going to start it again. Sorry.
I'll just start with that question again. What do you think about drugs and steroids? Were they around in the 70s or?
You didn't know because you didn't have the testing like you do now, but the people weren't as bulked up as they used to be with, McGuire and some of these guys that, all of a sudden you see, why am I forgetting the New York or San Francisco Giants guy?
Barry Bonds.
Barry Bonds. All of a sudden you see this progression of this guy is hitting the weight room or what? And you don't realize that, it is steroids. I mean, there was steroids at Michigan State with, Mandridge up there, super offensive lineman and such, and just big bulk and such like that. And when he got to Green Bay, he wasn't allowed to use the steroids. And so all of a sudden it's like he went down to nothing, and then he was never the player that he was even at Michigan State. So it must have been allowed a little bit more in colleges than it is today. But back then, it's like even cycling, trying to refine your testing and such, the steroids or whatever it is, let's just say, enhancing the body, was just kind of like, it's been around for a while, but never to in depth like it was, say 10 years ago.
So what do you think about the issue? Do you think drugs should be left out completely, or?
Well, you watch, wrestling, you watch any of this other stuff, it's allowed in that sport. It's not, you're saving the athlete by not letting them use it, let's put it that way, because of what it does to their system long term. there's been a few football injuries, for brain cancer and such as that, but they can link it to steroid use or some other kind of synthetic growth hormone, whatever. It's something that it's not good for the player, but that's up to them. I mean, if they want to do it, I kind of like to see them hit 70 home runs a year. Today it's if they hit 50, they're good, but most of it's just on the natural ability and such as that, their own strength. It's one of those things. It's professional sport. I mean, you're paying to watch it, so I guess if you want to see whatever you want to see when it comes to good, bad, or indifference, if you want to see more scoring, then you probably could use steroids.
So, like, pretty much let the athletes know, like, this, like, steroids obviously have negative effects. I mean, if that's what you want to do, I mean, why not? If everybody has equal access to it, then it's,
right.
I don't know, it seems fair to me if everybody can do it.
Right. And that's the way I look at it. I mean, I know there's, they're regulating everything, but, truthfully, can they really say that they regulate football as much as they think? I mean, it's not, these guys are huge.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Last question. How has women's sports changed, and what do you think about the development of them?
Well, since I was raised in high school, back in the day, they had Girls Athletic Association, that's it. They could never play basketball, they're aqua sprites, they could never swim. We had some excellent athletes, but female athletes in our school, but they weren't allowed to do anything. They would play hockey or floor hockey or something like that as a recreational sport, but never really anything that varsity level. My daughter, when I started out, I had her. My son, we tried to get him into soccer, and he didn't really go for it at the time. But our daughter took off, and we ended up with myself and another guy knowing a little bit about soccer, and ended up traveling. Having a traveling team for Gull Lake, is with the Gull Lake areas where because Battle Creek had soccer at one time, died off, and then Kalamazoo picked up because of Upjohns and bringing in people that knew soccer, let's put it that way, and worked in the company. But the sports there in general, I am all for. I know every school has to have equal access for both male and female athletes. It's kind of like I'm all for it. I mean, of course, my neighbor is one of the coaches for the Michigan State volleyball team, so it happens to be all women. So I think he'd kill me if I didn't say it should be equal and fair and all this good stuff with female. And my daughter, I enjoyed watching her play, and I actually enjoyed coaching girls more than I did.
I listen more.
They were just fun. Yeah. They just learn, and they actually listen. Even though they get through their conversations, they still listen to you. The boys just, I know how to do that already. Never mind. Okay, you just go show me first, and then I'll tell you what to do. But other than that, sports has been the big part, and I don't know why, but it's just one of those things that even today, if I have time, I'm sitting in front of the TV watching something. And I used to go to games, but it gets to be where I don't want to, pay the big bucks to go pay, place, either the owners or the players or something like that. It's my theory is I'd rather watch them on TV and my comfort of my own living room. It's kind of like NASCAR. Over IndyCar style, which that's taken over. But other than that, I think.
All right.
How do we do?
Great. Thanks.